because not only is it unbreakable, it's going to make really good coffee, and when you go through that x-ray thing at the airport, they're going to be like, that person knows their coffee. Hi everyone, I'm Brian with FrenchPressCoffee.com, and this is the definitive French press coffee buying guide. First, materials. There's a good few materials that are used in French presses, and we've got experience with all of them. Let's talk about some of the different materials in French presses when you're going to choose one. I'm going to mention these in really no major particular order. This is just to let you guys know about the different materials that are available when you're choosing a French press. I'll start on the far left here because this is actually a little bit unheard of with an all-glass French press. There's no caging material on this French press. A little bit more of a designer type of item and something that was going to appeal to some folks and maybe not to others. Moving on to more commonly known French presses, we've got French presses like the Bodum and the S Pro that I have right here in the center. These are typically going to be glass, metal, and maybe a little bit of plastic, and not much more beyond that. Moving on up, you're going to find all-metal French presses. I myself love an all-metal French press, and my main reason for that is that I've had a tendency, honestly, to break the glass liners of a lot of my French presses, and there's no way I'm going to break this. After that, we have ceramic French presses. And ceramic, again, something that's becoming a little more commonplace now. This is primarily ceramic, again, going to have a little bit of metal, whether that be aluminum, steel, etc., some plastic, and every once in a while in some of these you also might find a rubber seal of some kind or something along those lines. And finally, plastic. This is the AeroPress. We've talked about it and most everyone knows what it is, but the AeroPress is all plastic. And these are not as common. This is a French press of sorts, maybe not necessarily a traditional French press like the ones I have here, but of course you can find some in materials which are all plastic. What about pluses and minuses of those materials? It's pretty straightforward. Plastic is of course going to come in at a lower price point, and it's going to be very much nearly unbreakable. Unless you melt it or something else, plastic is pretty much going to last you almost forever. Downside is that some folks are not necessarily going to want a plastic French press or want their coffee to be in contact with that much plastic. Speaking about ceramic French presses, big bonuses with these is going to be the fact that you've got great heat retention, going to keep a lot of the heat inside of the coffee that you brew, keep it nice and hot. Very cool designs available, allows you to choose colors, which you can't do with most French presses, lets you get a little more designer about what you're choosing. So kind of a little more designer choices for you. Downside is you can't see the brew process at all. You have to make sure that you just keep track of your time and brew the way that you know that you should brew in order to make sure you get a good cup of French press coffee. Moving on to more traditional style French presses like the ones that I've got right here. These are the French press that we know, we love. They're tried, true, and tested. Very straightforward, sleek design, always definitely pretty sleek. You're going to find a lot of different designs, easy to use, look sleek, easy to take care of. Downside, glass. You might break it. Like I say, I've broken a good few French presses. For some folks, that might be a deal breaker. Moving on to stainless steel and metal French presses, the upside of these is going to be, again, like I say, you can't break this. So you could certainly try, but I don't know why you would want to. That's a big plus. They're great for travel. You can also customize them a little bit. You could get laser engraving on a metal French press if you want to give it as a gift or something along those lines. Downside, again, you can't see the brew process, so you need to just make sure you keep track of time and brew properly. But I would say that those upsides definitely outweigh the cons on a metal French press. And then finally, a designer glass French press. The upside is it really doesn't get much more sleek and designer than this. I mean, look at this. There's almost no metal on this thing. It looks really cool. It's maybe not something that is for everyday usage, however, and that could be a downside for some folks because you probably just want to have a quick cup of coffee. So that might be not for every day, but the designer aspect of these would be highly enticing, I think, to a lot of folks who want to impress folks that come over for coffee or anything along those lines. Next up, brew capacity. And this is something that really is going to be kind of defined by how much coffee you drink in a 20-minute period. That's what we'll generally say is, how much coffee do you drink in a 20-minute period, or how many folks are you going to be serving? And brew capacity is going to come into play in that case. And here's the reason why. There are many French press options that give you the ability to make just one cup. An AeroPress is great for that. Smaller French presses are great for that. Travel French presses are also great for that. This makes it so that you can get just one cup of coffee and get on your way and take care of yourself. However, let's say that you want to be able to brew a lot more coffee. You're brewing not only for yourself, but also for others, or maybe you just like to drink a lot of coffee. Well, there's a lot of great options because not only can you get those 1-cup options for those smaller brew sizes, but you can step all the way up to 2-liter brew options. So there are some very large options when it comes to choosing your French press. And again, the question to ask yourself, how much coffee am I going to drink in about a 20-minute period? Or how much coffee do I need for everyone in my house or those that I'm entertaining or anything along those lines? That's an important question to ask yourself. And I can tell you this from experience, having used smaller French presses in times past, it's a lot nicer to be able to just brew all of my coffee at once instead of having to brew, let's say, maybe 2 French presses. I just get to brew one, I have all the coffee that I need, and I'm good to go. Filtration, and this is an important thing to keep in mind when you are brewing, the actual brew basket, the brew filtration system in your French press, because this can affect the type of coffee that you're going to get. If you like the absolute cleanest brew that you can possibly get, first of all, there's a lot of different hacks for being able to do that depending on the type of French press that you use, and we've got videos that we can help you out with that here on FrenchPressCoffee.com. But what it boils down to very much is that you generally are going to get about 2 different ways of filtering and brewing your coffee in French press. On my right-hand side here, I have the classic way of brewing with French press coffee. It's very straightforward. You have a wire mesh filter that's right down here on the bottom of your press. You press down, that separates your coffee grounds from the rest of your coffee in your decanter, and that's what keeps you from getting, hopefully, grit in your coffee. The downside is that it's kind of likely that you're still going to get a little bit of grit. Now, the way to combat that we've seen in a lot of French presses is that you're going to see sometimes 2, 3, 4 wire mesh filters added on to your press. Sometimes that still is not going to do it. So if you're a little more picky and you want to make sure that you get the absolute cleanest cup possible, and that leads me to the second way of brewing your French press coffee, and that is the Espro way. This is very unique, and that is because the Espro practice of brewing with a French press is actually going to give you a very different filter type, as you can see if I compare the 2 of these. This filter has also 2 different wire mesh filters, but additionally, not only are those 2 filters going to make sure that coffee grounds don't get into the coffee that you'll be drinking, as you press down in your Espro press, you're actually going to separate your coffee grounds from the rest of your coffee, and this is going to make sure that you get the cleanest cup that you could possibly get. If you're someone that does not like any grit in your coffee, you're going to get a better go of it if you use an Espro press versus a standard French press. Pricing, which I know is going to be one of the biggest things that everyone is going to be looking at in this definitive French press coffee buying guide. Talking about pricing, very strictly speaking, something that is going to be plastic, like an AeroPress, something along those lines, is usually going to be on the lowest cost side of your pricing when you're stepping into a new French press. Moving on up from there, you're generally going to find your middle of the ground pricing somewhere in your ceramics and your traditional French presses. That's where you can get into a French press for not too much money at all and still get a good quality cup of coffee. Moving on up after that, you're going to find that your stainless steel and metal French presses and also your glass and designer French presses are usually going to be at about the top of cost when it comes to what it is that you're looking for in a French press. So it's going to come down to how much money you really want to spend and the features that you're going to get. If you want to experiment a little bit with French press coffee, you're not yet really sure about it, you don't know if it's the way to brew coffee for you, it's nice to be able to step into a lower cost French press, something that's going to allow you to be able to not spend as much money, test the waters, see if you like it, and then if you do, step on up to something that's going to cost a little bit more and maybe offer some different features. Portability and travel capability. This is not always something you might think about with a French press, but it's definitely becoming more commonplace now. And the AeroPress really kicked that party off when you break it right down. The AeroPress is very much one of the original travel French presses. It's a great way to make a really good cup of coffee in a hotel room. I will tell you, I do not like hotel room coffee. I like it when I bring my AeroPress with me, however, because I'm going to get a great cup of coffee. It's plastic, it doesn't weigh nearly anything, it's very easy to use. If maybe you don't want to be brewing on the go, but you still want French press coffee, that's where an option like the Espro Travel Press comes in handy. Now this looks like it's just simply a tumbler, a mug that I would drink out of, right? And you're partially right. I have a lid, I can open it up and I can drink out of it, but look right in there, what do I have? I have a French press. And the Espro Travel Press is very unique because what this will do is give me that same Espro brewing method that I was talking about earlier with the dual baskets and dual filtration system down here at the bottom, which is also going to separate my coffee grounds from the coffee that I'm drinking, but it gives it to me in a portable model from Espresso. If you like French press coffee and you want to do it while on the go, the Espresso Travel Press is also a great way to do that. And one other option worth mentioning here is to get yourself a all-metal French press, such as a stainless steel. And the reason for this is that when traveling, this is of course going to be unbreakable. It weighs a little bit more, and that's just something to keep in mind. If I compare this with an AeroPress or an Espresso Travel Press, these are very light and easy. However, these are again basically just single cup options. This is just for me. If I'm going to be traveling and I'm traveling with someone else, probably take along a stainless steel French press, because not only is it unbreakable, it's going to make really good coffee, and when you go through that x-ray thing at the airport, they're going to be like, that person knows their coffee. Thermal heat retention is something that we should also mention, because this is important. This is what also makes sure that your coffee actually does taste good. Different French presses will allow you to store your coffee for a little bit longer or a shorter period of time in the French press. Starting off with the classic French press, you got about 20 minutes that you're going to be able to store coffee in your classic French press after you've brewed it before it's really going to lose heat and you're going to have to heat it up again. In some French presses, you're going to get double thickness glass and some other options that are going to help you to extend that, but still more than 20 minutes probably not going to give you the best cup of coffee. Stepping on up to something like a ceramic, usually about 40 minutes, give or take, not too bad. You want to make sure you drink the coffee within that period of time, because that's about how long it's going to be kept nice and hot. If you really want to be able to brew a cup of coffee and let it sit, you're going to get about 2 hours out of a stainless steel French press, and that's because these are typically double walled. They're going to have great heat retention. So if you're looking for the best heat retention in a French press, step on up to a stainless steel or a ceramic. And finally, with the least heat retention is going to be your traditional French press. And bottom line, great tip here, make sure that you always preheat your French press. A little bit of hot water in there is going to make sure that that French press gets nice and hot, has better heat retention, and gives you a better cup of coffee. So there you have it, everyone. That is the definitive French press buying guide. Now remember, pricing is going to differ between a lot of these. Options are going to differ. We've got videos that show you how to use all of these French presses and tell you in depth about their features to help you to decide what is the best French press for you, whether it be your at-home coffee shop or on the road. So if you guys have questions, comments, if we've missed anything, if there's more that you want to know, remember, lots of videos here on FrenchPressCoffee.com to help you out, but you can always get in touch with us in the comments section of this video or find us at FrenchPressCoffee.com. As always, everyone, I am Brian with FrenchPressCoffee.com. Until next time, take care.
If you like that video, go ahead and give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on any more of our highly caffeinated videos. And if you subscribe, I'll give you a great coffee quote. Go on. I'll wait. Go on. The button's right there. Ah, there you go. Thank you so much. And now for our quote. I like my men like I like my coffee. Strong, hot, and steamy.